Over the past several decades, tales of time and space travel and humanoid robots have become popular hallmarks of the sci-fi genre, so it's only natural that these elements appear in Japanese RPGs as well. Here, we aim to explore the settings, characters, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible parallels to the real world. My name is Zio, and I'll be your lore keeper. The original plan was to have Risa in the spotlight, but that has since evolved into being about casts in general. Risa doesn't gain significance in the story until later on, but we'll still be referencing her from time to time. Dancing around certain things that don't happen until the latter episodes has proven challenging. So, henceforth, we shall refrain from covering any specific characters until the curtain has fallen on episode 6 outside Japan. Casts, sometimes called androids or cyborgs, are sturdy mechanical beings found throughout the Phantasy Star franchise. They're often characterized by their high levels of stamina and affinity for melee or ranged combat, and apart from a few exceptions, casts are unable to wield techniques. Just like with the Rappies, our first port of call is the third game in the franchise, Phantasy Star 3: Generations of Doom on the Genesis. Here, we meet the cyborgs Mew and Ren, Mew being the red-haired female, and Ren being the black-haired male. These two would serve as staple party members for Prince Risa and his descendants throughout the game. Mew and Ren would also have the distinction of being the only non-fleshies that could use techniques. Mew's technique centered around support, like Resta, whereas Ren's focused on offense, like Foy. In Phantasy Star 4, we'd be introduced to Demi and Ren. It should be noted that this isn't the same Ren from the last game. These two can't use techniques, but their high HP and physical strength more than make up for this. Now we come to Phantasy Star Online. Here, they're called androids, and just like their predecessors, they can't use techniques. To make up for this, they can use traps which allow them to freeze enemies in place or confuse them, as well as do flat damage. They also have access to slow traps, but only while sparring with fellow Hunters Guild members. Males have exceptionally high health and attack power, whereas females sport high accuracy and defensive stats. The casts in Phantasy Star Zero were functionally identical, but they also had access to healing traps. Now we come to Phantasy Star Universe and its handheld sequels. Casts were originally created to serve humans, but they eventually became self-aware and developed free will. This led to a years-long struggle for caste rights, which they would ultimately win. As a result, the vast majority of the planetary government on the planet Param was held by castes. Clones of non-castes called copy castes are also known to exist. The castes on the Goral system are a sturdy lot, able to take almost as much abuse as their beast counterparts. Their exceptional attack power and accuracy make them excellent hunters. They also have another trump card in the form of the mighty SUV weapon, capable of dishing out massive damage to larger enemies or clearing out hordes of smaller ones. There were cases of castes wanting to use techniques like their human and Newman brethren, but they were often met with scorn and derision by their fellow guardians. Now we come to their current iteration in PSO2. Castes are mechanical beings that retain a small amount of organic material from their previous lives. The caveat is they have no memory of their previous lives, which would no doubt be a mercy in some cases. A human could be turned into a caste for any number of reasons. One could be photon sickness, brought on by the person's extremely high photon potential, Risa being the most notable case. Another scenario would be the person sustaining grievous injury, in combat or otherwise, and they wanted to keep living despite the memory loss. Or they could just be older and want to continue serving ARKS in combat, but without the limitations of their natural bodies. Regius and Maria would be noteworthy cases. And let's not forget that ARKS was insanely corrupt while Luther was in charge, so it would stand to reason that a number of people were converted against their will. This is never stated explicitly, but given what we know about Luther, it seems very plausible. It's also not uncommon for military organizations in the real world to use their rank and file as lab rats, with or without their knowledge or consent. The conversion process wasn't without its kinks though. The earliest castes seem to have suffered immense psychological damage too, Risa once again being the most notable case. So because of this, it would suggest that the memory loss would become a feature rather than a bug. And then you had the numerous false spawn encounters followed by the Elder War. Did Risa and others have some ancillary purpose in those encounters? We do know that ARKS incurred some heavy losses at the time, so a number of things could be left up to interpretation. Over the past 3 decades, the fields of robotics, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence have made massive improvements. But they still have a long way to go before they reach the level of the machines we just talked about. Science fiction has always been about exploring the implications of scientific and technological advancements beyond our age. So that begs the question, would you want to be a cast, even if it meant sacrificing your memory and potentially your sanity? As for myself, I'm gonna have to take a hard pass on that. So this thing almost didn't happen this week on account of the fires burning across the Pacific United States. So shout out to the firefighters and other fantastic first responders out there. You folks are the real guardians. As always, thanks for watching.